Hello and welcome to all you lovely people on LinkedIn and on YouTube where we're streaming this. This is Fit to Lead with me, Jay Unwin. If you are watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, please chuck a comment in. Let me know if you're watching it live or on a replay. Let me know where you're watching from as well, because that's always interesting. For a few sessions up until now, you may have seen this. There was no video last week on my profile, but prior to that, I did a few weeks and I called it the Wellbeing Leadership Forum. Now, this is the same kind of concept, but I've decided to tie it in with my podcast and my newsletter, which have been on hiatus for a little while. So they're all going to be under one banner, so I can kind of build a trifecta of awesomeness under one name. So that is why the name has changed to Fit to Lead. If you've been following me for a little while, you will recognize that. What else do we need? We need some likes and stuff like that. Whether you're watching it on YouTube or on LinkedIn, hit those likes and those reaction buttons, because that makes me feel popular, which is really nice. But it also helps with the algorithm, so I can reach more people and give some of them these lovely insights, which may well help them improve their mental and physical well-being and fitness, as well as supporting those around them in a more effective and sustainable way. Gamu, hey, I can see that you're watching live on LinkedIn. That's brilliant. But yeah, that's what it's about, after all, is giving people some insights that they can use, not only to improve their own mental and physical well-being, but also to help support those around them. So people in leadership roles, in organizations, in companies, in charities, in communities, even in families as well, because we all have impacts around us. Antonia, hey, nice to have you on here as well. So if you drop any questions as we go along into the comments, I'll do my best to answer them either during the show or at the end. We are going to be using this for the podcast as well, so we might not get to all of them during the recording, but at the end we'll go through any comments, any questions, any thoughts which you have thrown into the comments, either on LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll do our best to answer those. And when I keep saying we, that's not the royal we. That's not just me saying that, you know, I guess bigging myself up a little bit. We. This is a one-man band after all. But I have got a guest today. So one of the things over the past few weeks of doing this, it was very much just me sharing my own thoughts and ideas around things. And I thought, to tie this in with the podcast that I used to do, where I used to have some fascinating guests from all different kind of businesses, backgrounds, with different areas of expertise, I thought we'd do that on the same thing. Mel, hey. Carol, hey. Awesome. We've got a few good people watching here. Fantastic. Lovely to see you all. So I decided to get some guests on. Now, this is the first time I've had a guest on a live video that I have streamed. So bear with me if I get any of the tech wrong, because just in the kind of backstage area before we went live, I've already been struggling with clicking the right buttons. So fingers crossed this all goes well. But today my guest is business coach and money mindset expert Vicki Ostrowski, and we're going to be chatting about wealth over well-being is the little phrase that she sent across to me. Wealth over well-being, financial fitness, financial well-being, and how that affects other areas of life. So in a moment, I'm going to be bringing Vicki on, and we are going to get cracking. So let's hope that I click the right button. Vicki, how are you doing today?
Hi, Jay. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I'm excited about this. I feel like it's not a completely new thing, but it's a new incarnation of something I've been doing for a little while. So I'm feeling really excited about this. And how long have we been meaning to have this chat?
Oh, I've lost count. Long time. But no, I'm really excited as well. It's really, I'm honoured to be the first live guest on this platform.
Well, it made a lot of sense, because like I said, we've been trying to get this conversation down for a while.
We have, yeah.
We're like busy at different times and stuff like that. So for those people watching, those people listening, Vicki has been we've kind of coached each other in a few different things, haven't we? And
we've helped each other. Yeah. We met at a speaking event, didn't we? And we were both so on the same page that we instantly clicked.
Absolutely. I remember watching your talk. It was at Somerset Business Show, and I remember you talking about habits, and you had that slide with the shed and the path down to the shed
across the lawn. Yeah,
and that, just anyone who's seen Vicki speak or any of her like keynotes or anything like that will know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you'll have to go and see it. But there's this slide with a shed and this overgrown lawn and this kind of well-trodden path down to the shed, and I was just like, yes, that is a visual for exactly how I talk about habits.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about how we tread a neuro pathway into our brains, literally, to, you know, keep us repeating the same, not always positive habits. So
no, that's the thing. It's always working for us or against us.
Absolutely.
The habits are there, either side of it. So it's about finding that, I guess, understanding that structure of how habits work and harnessing it rather than trying to fight against it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just to give you an overview of that, because people will be probably wondering what we're on about.
Yeah,
The
probably.
visual was, by my own admission, I have a shed at the bottom of my garden that is across the lawn. I have a path that goes around the lawn. But, I'm busy. I want to get to that shed as quickly as I possibly can. So I very often walk across the lawn. And even when that lawn is mowed, even when it grows, that path that I've trodden in that lawn is still there. And that's the same as what happens when we repeat a habit, be that a negative one or a positive one. So obviously, if it's something that's negative, that's actually not serving you anymore, it's going to be difficult to change to going around the lawn, but it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was to explain the slide.
Yeah, otherwise, we're just talking kind of about something a bit abstract, I guess, for anyone who's listening. So I can picture it. So for those people who are watching this who don't know who you are and what you do, I've obviously given a little brief intro, but do you want to tell people what it is, what your area of expertise is and what you help people with?
Absolutely. I am a former accountant, and during my years in accountancy, I established quite quickly that it's very rarely the physical money that causes people the problems. It's their beliefs, it's their kind of, attachments to money. It's the things they've been told, the things that they've learnt, and the emotions involved in that. And life moved me on like it did, and I didn't want to be an accountant anymore. I'd also studied psychology for fun. I am that person. And the two kind of intrinsically linked to lead me into coaching, with an emphasis around helping people grow their businesses, but at the same time overcoming their money hang-ups, be that their kind of mission to only seek money, because business and life is so much more than that, or be it them actually limiting themselves in their business because they have hang-ups surrounding money. So that's what I do. And I help people overcome their money, their funky money juju, either if that's something that they're striving towards that is in an unhealthy way, or something that they can't break through a limit on. So that's a brief overview of how I help people.
It's an interesting one with money, because we've chatted about this at various points. I'm not massively motivated by money in kind of the big sums kind of way and the flashy material success kind of way. But we've chatted about this, and you've helped me with my own kind of beliefs around money and things like that as well. So I can vouch for you. But it's interesting how we do have these beliefs which have come from childhood, or they've come from experiences and stuff like that. And I've realized, there was a quote that I heard years back from Zig Ziglar, the sales trainer, very well-known geezer from the past, who said, money isn't everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen. And I found that as a really interesting quote, because money isn't everything. We hear that a lot. We hear a lot of people saying, money doesn't buy happiness, and all of these kinds of little phrases around money and around finances. And our interpretation of those obviously can spiral a little bit. Love of money is the root of all evil. These kind of like biblical sayings, if you like, have been around for thousands of years. And to a degree, it's true. However, there is it is still a necessity, much like Zig Ziglar said. It ranks up there with oxygen, because without it, we can't live at all, really, because of the system. And whether the system's fair or not is a whole other conversation, but the system is the system, and without money we can't live, we can't survive. And the thing which always seems to be the case, you touched on it briefly when you were talking about the people you work with, but some people feel like if you pursue money solely as your goal, you will sacrifice your health and your well-being. And if you ignore it completely, you can focus on your health and well-being. And it seems to be this, people are trying to make this kind of almost binary decision between two things which are mutually exclusive. Is that something you come across?
Oh, all the time. Absolutely all the time. And I just sort of, to touch back on what you said just now, I absolutely agree. There's not many of us that can physically pull off living off grid and not actually having to have money to function in some way. And even if you do live off grid, there's still going to be things that you can't sustain off grid that money needs to be available to us for. So it is essential. We all need it. We all have to kind of deal with it. But I do come across a lot of people who feel that they either have to be super successful and therefore pursue money as the outcome, or look after themselves properly. It's very much an either or kind of scenario for lots of people. And it doesn't have to be. And this is kind of one of the things I'm really, really passionate about. It's one of the things I teach. You can be successful and take good care of yourself. You can take time for self-care and take time for your business. It doesn't have to be an either or situation. We have been conditioned and we have been taught, kind of going back to the late 80s, early 90s, that there's some kind of badge of honor in kind of almost killing yourself slowly in the pursuit of money, which a lot of people equate to happiness. But they are all their individual things, and you can actually get them to work all in conjunction with each other. It doesn't have to be, today I'll focus on wealth, next week I'll focus on my health and well-being, and then when I've made my money, I'll be happy. It's actually very, very rarely how it works.
Like with anything in life, there's everything's kind of linked and crosses over and woven together, rather than being individual kind of little pockets of this is this and this is that. Like when you're at school, everything's divided into subjects and faculties. You're taught science and you're taught English and you're taught math.
Absolutely.
But in reality, all of these things are crossing over. And if you kind of go out into the world and you develop a career, or you start a business, or you're doing anything really, there are elements, or even just everyday life, there are elements of maths and elements of communication in English and elements of science and understanding the world around us, and they're all kind of cross over. We don't go, I'm thinking about science. It's like, if you're budgeting for your weekly shop, you're doing maths, you're doing nutrition, you're doing all kinds of bits.
You're doing economics to a point. It's so multifaceted. It's not, today I'll focus on my health and well-being, tomorrow I'll focus on my business, the day after that I'll focus on being happy. They do all intrinsically link. And I think it's not so overwhelming as it was, say, 10, 15 years ago now. About people are more self-aware, people are becoming more aware of how much their health and wellness actually contributes towards their pursuit of happiness and money, because again, they're not one and the same thing. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and I see this on a daily basis. I cannot, if I say to people, what have you done for yourself this week, and I hold my hands up, I've done this. I have not taken very good care of myself in pursuit of money, success, business. But if you say to people, what have you done for yourself this week, I quite often hear words to the effect of, I haven't got time. I need to hit this target. Haven't got time to worry about going for a swim or taking a bath even, or, I need to have a really, really quick shower and then I need to be back to the grindstone. You actually really don't. And success is also subjective. Too many people were sadly, and this is going to be controversial, too many people were sadly chasing somebody's level 10 when they're only at level 2. And that, bringing into the sort of mixed stress and kind of overwhelm, is a recipe for success, stress and overwhelm. If you're chasing somebody else's dream because you believe that's what you should do, you're soon going to make yourself quite ill in the process of trying to obtain that.
There's an interesting one there, and there's a big crossover with kind of the fitness and well-being side of things that I do, in the sense that a lot of people get caught up in other people's goals rather than looking at kind of what they actually really want themselves. And this happened to me from a financial and material success perspective as well, in kind of past projects that I've worked on, where I was surrounded by people who were very material focused. They were very financially incentivized, which is fine as well. Like, I have absolutely no judgment against that, but they were very motivated by big houses, shiny cars, etc., etc., etc. Now, if that's what someone's goal is, that's awesome. More power to them. Crack on. And because I was around these people, I thought that was my goal, and so I was working towards these things, and I never got the traction that I wanted. And I never there were certain barriers that I couldn't get past. And it wasn't until I really reflected on my goals that I realized it was because I didn't really want that stuff. And I therefore was not willing to do the work to achieve those things, because I didn't really care how big my house was, how shiny my car was, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to reconsider those goals and think, actually, what is the next step that I want to achieve? And like I was saying, in fitness and well-being, it's very similar. We're bombarded with imagery of what success in a health and fitness perspective looks like.
Yeah.
And we think that in order for us to be successful in our own health and fitness, we need to do those same things or achieve those same end results. And that focus on end results, which are not necessarily unobtainable, but far outside what we can reasonably achieve given our lifestyles. I mean, a prime example is when people look at, I'm going to use The Rock, right? I'm going to use him as an example because his job now as obviously he's got various businesses and stuff as well now off the back. He's great at marketing, right? He knows what he's doing on that front, and he's capitalized.
He does. He's a great guy.
Yeah, but his job is looking that way because of the types of films he does.
Yeah.
And prior to being in films, he was a wrestler, and therefore, again, there was a certain image. And prior to that, he was in American football for a brief time.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been paid to be in a certain physical state.
Yeah.
And yes, he had people go, yeah, well, he's got kids and he's got all these businesses to run. Yes, but it's still a requirement. And it has been up until this point to look that way and be in that shape for work.
Yes.
And he's surrounded by people who are paid a lot of money to help him with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for the average person, we're bombarded with that kind of imagery in movies, in magazines, on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But really what we should be looking at is, right, where are we now and how can we improve that a little bit? And what's the next step for us? Like you said about level 10s and level 2s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, what's your level 3? Where do you need to go to just level up that next step? And would that actually be more motivating and aspirational than someone who is, so far down the line that you almost can't see yourself there?
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I've learned the hard way. I used to be an all or nothing type of person with my fitness. Now, I'm clearly not built to be an athlete, but it is what it is. And I used to be the person who would suddenly get it about her and hit the gym 5 days in a row, and I'd be absolutely then done in for the next 10 days because we're being bombarded with all this imagery of how we should be. And it's the same with your financial health as well. I often get people come to me and they'll say, and it's the magic number at the moment, isn't it? It's like 10K month, need a 10K month. And I always ask the question, why? 99.9% of them can't answer that. And the reason why is because we absorb everything that we hear and we see. So we're absorbing all of this imagery of the body beautiful and how we should look and how much our thigh gap should be and how, our hips should look and, even how we should do our hair and our makeup and the food that we should eat. So we're being bombarded with all of this imagery. And certainly in the coaching realm, there's all of this 10K, 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 10K. So people are actually absorbing this without actually sitting and doing an assessment of whether this is right for them or not. And if they're currently on like £1,500 a month, which sadly some people that come to me are because, they haven't had the systems in place, to suddenly think about going to 10K is insurmountable. It's like me waking up tomorrow morning, no training, no nothing, and going, okay, so I'm going to go and run a marathon today. It's not going to end well. And it's the same with obviously your financial health. Yes, your 10K month is actually, and don't shoot me for saying it's actually really quite easily achievable, providing you have the right infrastructure in place and it's sustainable for you. Yeah. And I work with numerous people who do 10, 20, 30K months, but equally I work with people who are actually happy at a lower level. Yeah. Because we don't kind of sit back always and assess, is this my goal? Is this what I'm doing because I believe I should be doing it? And, where does this sit with my values? Is this actually right for me? Because it's not right for everybody.
Obviously, you work mostly with people who are in business, either, solo or as the head of a small team, for example. Yeah. If you kind of extrapolate this across to people who are employees in an organization, and there's obviously a slight difference in that, jumping up your income by huge amounts isn't as, and I know you said, so the easy thing is an interesting one. The way I see it is simple and easy are two slightly different things. And sometimes things can be simple but not easy, So for example, running a marathon is simple. You start running and you don't stop until you've done 26.2 miles. It's not complicated, but it's not easy.
No.
And so it's important to kind of make that distinction. Now, if you look at people who are in organizations, because obviously I work primarily with organizations these days, the ability for someone working in any role, whether it's entry level, whether it's management, whether it's senior leadership, the ability to increase your income by a large amount is not really on the table. It's incremental. You can get pay rises and you can get promotions, but it is a very competitive environment.
It is.
So it's slightly different than building an infrastructure to bring in more clients for you as an individual. However, what I think, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, because it's a fascinating part of well-being that's often not talked about, is this kind of financial well-being piece. And the angle that I come at it from, which you may agree, you may disagree, but I'd love to have a conversation about, is that it's about having awareness and taking control of the bits you can control, so that you have some control over the trajectory you're on financially, rather than being at the mercy of the elements. So to use an analogy, because I love analogies and metaphors and stuff like that, and I've been told a couple of times recently that I come up with good analogies and good metaphors. This isn't one of mine. This is obviously just one that's often used when we're talking about, all being in the same boat. We're not all in the same boat, but we're in the same ocean.
We're on the same ocean. We've got very, very different vessels.
Exactly. So like someone who's in business for themselves and has a very maneuverable boat, in that they can change direction very quickly because it's only them they have to worry about.
Increase their fees and all of that type of thing.
Yeah, they can upgrade their boat quite quickly by changing their own behaviors and bits and pieces like that. Now, if we're looking at finances, then we're all in individual boats, maybe with our families. And all those boats are of different sizes, different powers, and so on and so forth. Some people have got a lovely big gin palace, and other people are in a tiny little dinghy. And that's the nature of the world we live in. Unfortunately,
and some people have only got a float. Yeah,
exactly. Some people are quite literally floundering around with barely anything to hold on to. Now, there's certain things we can do and certain things we can't do. And what I'd like to try and focus on as much as possible are the things that we can do, even if we're in a situation not of our own making, which has put us into a challenging circumstance. So, and this, again, the crossover between kind of physical and mental well-being and finances is quite stark here. It's quite obvious. And that is, there's a lot of things we cannot control. So, for example, socioeconomic background, our upbringing, and all of those kinds of things, the country we were born in, and all of those kind of things we cannot control. And on the kind of physical health side of things, it's stuff like our genetics, and again, socioeconomic background and stuff like that makes a big impact on our physical health.
Absolutely.
But the things that we can control, if we go, right, well, I'm in a lot of debt, for example, and I want to get out of that debt, you can't just suddenly go, right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to earn enough money to pay off all my debt in a month, especially if you're working in an employed role. But there are certain little things you can do to dip your oar in the water from that little boat that you're in, and start trying to steer it in the same direction. And what I've found is that your well-being, as a result of the actions you take rather than the end goal, is one of the most powerful ways to frame it. Because when you know that you're doing something, even if it's something small, and you're taking responsibility and you're taking a little bit of control over the things that you know you can control, and letting go of some of the things outside your control, the self-esteem which comes with that is very, very powerful when it comes to reducing stress and feeling better about where you're at. That's a little kind of rant on my view of financial fitness. How does that tie in with the way you kind of look at things?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things that is fundamental, so I don't come from a position of grandeur, just to make that clear to your viewers. I have had a little and I have had a lot. I am, I'm in a really good place now, but I've also been incredibly happy with a little and incredibly happy with a lot. And I've been miserable with a little and I've been miserable with a lot. And this kind of ties in nicely to what you're saying. It's not always necessarily money won't necessarily make you happy if you're intrinsically miserable. You'll just have a slightly more comfortable misery.
Yeah.
So it's very important to set your compass for where you are at now, regardless of whether you're an employee, regardless of whether, you know, some people sadly are sort of bouncing out the other side of what we've been through recently, and they found themselves having to be reliant on the system, so to speak. So that's actually, you know, caused a lot of problems for some people. So if you've got debt, for example, you need to take the sting out of it first and foremost, to be very, very aware of how you think about it. Lots of people see debt as intrinsically bad. And it is, if you think of it that way. It can be the real monster in a room. So instead, start thinking about it as something that you chose to pay off over time, whether that be something that was enforced upon you because of circumstances or something that you did literally choose to do. So start thinking about it differently is the first thing that I can sort of bit of advice I can give you. And that will allow you to set your compass depending on where you're at. So if you think, oh my God, I'm such a bad person, I'm just so useless with money, I'm in debt, that's going to kind of sit in your unconscious memory, and you're going to feel that you're a bad person and that you're useless with money. And it will become a self-perpetuating cycle. You'll just beat yourself up further about it. Instead, say, okay, so I've chosen to pay this off over time. How can I do that in a manageable fashion? So, you know, can I afford to put £5 a week back towards that debt? Can I afford to, you know, reduce something that I see, you know, as an essential, which probably isn't? What tiny, tiny little baby steps can you make? And I can guarantee you that most people that say to me, oh, there's absolutely nothing I can cut back on to pay off £5 more on my debt, we always find something, or usually. You know, there are many ways you can look at it, but start where you are. Do not think that you have to, you know, rapidly go out and sell all of your things and just sit on the floor, because that's the easiest way to make some money to pay off your debt. That's only going to, as far as a wellness sort of perspective is concerned, make you feel more miserable because you're sat on the floor and you're eating ramen noodles.
Sure.
So it's about looking at it as a, you know, as a whole, rather than need to pay off my debt. Okay, so you need to pay off your debt, but how can you do that in a fashion that's manageable for you? What little things can you do in order to make that, you know, in order to make a start, in order to take that first step? It's the same with my marathon kind of analogy. You know, if I decide, which is just for the record a bit unlikely, that I want to run a marathon, how do I take that first step? Probably by going out for some really, really good walks and building up my stamina, my physical fitness, you know, because it's probably not going to do me much good if I say, okay, I'm going to be Forrest Gump and I'm going to go out and run today.
Sure.
And it's exactly the same with your financial sort of well-being. What little step can I take in order to start improving this outlook, in order to reset my compass, even if it's by 1 degree?
I think
sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that is like, I mean, it can be, I think it's true of pretty much anything. I mean, you used the example of the marathon, and it is true of any kind of fitness goal, well-being goal, or anything like that. The small, I mean, I saw a visual of this, and I love the visuals. You know, we talked about the shed visual earlier on. I saw a visual in the last few weeks, which was the 2 ladders. It might have even been you that shared it. It was 2 ladders, one where the rungs were so far apart that people couldn't reach the next rung.
It wasn't me, but I seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so one of the ladders was, the steps were so big that you can't even reach the next one.
Yeah.
And then the other one, both the ladders are the same length. The next one was a normal ladder. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it's many, 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 many more incremental steps to get to the goal, but you're far more likely to get there because you can at least reach that first bloody step. Like, there's no way that you're going to get to the end goal if you can't even get up 1 step. And I think that's the thing which we're not very good. Humans aren't very good long-term thinkers. We like instant gratification. I've just seen a comment. For those of you listening to the recording of this, we're recording this live, and I've just seen a comment come through from Mel. It was Mel who shared it.
Excellent.
So Mel,
thanks, Mel.
For those of you who don't know her, Mel Wakeman, go and look her up. She's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it was Mel who shared it, which makes a lot of sense given what she does around kind of coaching and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can't, any journey of any length starts with a single step and all of those kinds of things. And
I think I know that sounds like a cliche, but it is so true. You know, I mean,
that's why they're cliches, right?
Absolutely, because there's so much truth in that. I know from my own admission that when I was trying to get myself out of a very big hole when I lost my business back in 2008, and if anybody's mildly curious about that, you'll find it on my LinkedIn page. But things that I was, paying out that I didn't need to pay out, and it might only be, a silly little thing. And I had to then be very, very objective. Do I really need Sky TV? No, I probably don't.
Yeah.
And now, for example, while I don't believe if you stop paying for Netflix, you'll be able to buy a house like was quoted recently.
That was my next thing that I was going to say.
Absolutely not. No, there's a lot more to it than that. But equally, that if you look at it objectively, if you're in debt, for example, say you run up a credit card bill in the pandemic because you needed to feed your kids. It happened, sadly. That's, that was the way of the world. If now coming out of the other side of that, you're panicking about that debt, but you've also got Netflix, that's when it can have some benefit to you. Do you really need Netflix? Do you need to binge watch that series? Or can you redistribute that 17 quid elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's also only temporary. It doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, it can. And I think that this is a very personal thing because, for example, just to add, as a devil's advocate kind of thing here, if Netflix is one of your only vices, I use the word vice pretty loosely here, but if it's one of your own, if it's one of the only things you spend money on that brings you joy and pleasure in your day-to-day life, then don't give it up.
Don't give it up.
About the personal thing.
Yeah,
it's about personal understanding. And what I really want to make clear is that neither myself nor Vicki are saying this is what you should do.
We don't want anybody making their lives unnecessarily miserable for the sake of improving it slightly, because that's counterproductive.
Yeah.
But equally, I know people who have got Netflix, Disney Plus, Sky. You probably don't need all of that.
Yeah, and a lot of the time you're not using all of them anyway.
No.
I've certainly looked through when I've kind of gone through a bit of a phase of going, right, I want to get my financial house in order a little bit. I've looked through what am I paying for on direct debit, and there's always been a couple where I go, I'd forgotten I even had that. And that's where you can go, that was £10 a month. That's not a huge amount of money necessarily, depending on the situation that you're in, but it can make a pretty significant difference because £10 a month adds up. 120 quid a year. That's 120 quid a year that you could put somewhere else.
Absolutely. Looking at it as a bigger picture, it's like, I had a number of subscriptions on the go, and it's not that I needed the money, but I had to question whether I really needed those subscriptions.
Yeah.
And, £10 a month on a candle subscription, £12 a month on a book subscription, £15 a month on a, online magazine subscription doesn't sound a lot. But if you go through all of that and you add it up on a month by month basis, you'll probably be quite astonished at what you're spending that you don't really need to spend.
It's a bit like if we talk about it from a food perspective, and I know I don't want to, get on the wrong side of Mel.
Oh,
I know
no,
that she's listening.
I wouldn't do that.
So, but I think that she'll agree with me on this one. Cancelling all of your outgoings that are for enjoyment, just so that you can put yourself in a better financial position, is akin to going on a diet, whereby you are sacrificing happiness in order to try and be more happy, which is very backwards. And when you break it down like that, it doesn't work.
No, absolutely. And I'm not.
You don't go on a financial diet.
I do not want anybody making their lives unnecessarily unhappy. If you chill out at the end of the day by watching Netflix, I'm not about to tell you need to get rid of that.
Good, because I love Netflix.
Good.
Other streaming services are available.
Other streaming services are available, but I'm not a big TV person. So for me, that's not essential, but I'm very respectful of the fact that people do want that as a thing. We're about getting your compass set for you as an individual, not Tracy down the road because she made a few quid doing something, not so-and-so who's done something different. You are as unique as we are, all completely unique, and we need to plan for our health and our wellness, our stress management, our financial security and health in a way that is as unique as we are. That's
perfect.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, that's probably a good place to leave it, because I think that what we've talked about around the kind of the theory of it and the kind of overview, the general kind of, this is the lay of the land, this is the kind of how you can change your relationship with money, or how you could potentially have a different relationship with money. But then we've talked a bit about practical things you can do in terms of setting yourself on a better trajectory. And you talked about changing course by even just a degree. Look at these little choices that you can make and go, actually, this would be better for me. We've also made it very, very clear, I hope, to anyone who's watching this, anyone who's listening to this, that it's not about blame, and it's not about
no.
And you may well be in a financial position that is not of your doing. I'm a big fan of personal responsibility, but I don't think that is the same as accepting blame and accepting fault. If you're in a situation where where you're not where you'd like to be for any reason in any area of your life, and you've been impacted by stuff that is outside your control, either chance or other people's behavior, then that's not your fault. However, you can still take responsibility for the choices that you make going forward. You can still take responsibility, and that responsibility is very much a powerful tool when it comes to improving your overall well-being and how you feel about your life. Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what fitness and well-being is about. It's about quality of life. So hopefully that's been clear. It's not about saying, hey, you're in this mess, do something about it. It's you can do something about it if you want.
I'm not in the business of shaming anybody for their money choices. I've made some pretty, not clever ones in the past. It's all part of life, but we can learn from that and move on. And there is also many people out there that can help you with that. There is no shame in it.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you think about it, if you improved your outlook, regardless of whether it be in your stress or your health and your wellness or your money, just by 1 degree a day, that's an awful lot of progress in a 12-month period.
Absolutely. I've just been having a look through the questions, mostly kind of nods of agreement rather than questions about anything. So Vicki, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on to chat. Thank you.
It's been a joy. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been really good, hasn't it? And thank you to everyone who has watched this live, everyone who has watched or listened to this on replay. If you're interested in what Vicki does, then you should be able to find her link to her LinkedIn in the description, either on the video or on the podcast show notes. So go and check out Vicki and see what she does. Give her a follow and learn some more stuff about financial well-being and money mindset. Vicki, once again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Jay.
Cheers.
You too.